During a reconciliation dinner at my son's magnificent mansion after years of distance, I received a mysterious text message. It demanded that I stand up and leave immediately without saying a word to my own son. I obeyed and discovered a horrifying truth. Half an hour later, the police were knocking on their door. But before all that, before the police and the bitter truth, there was only the quiet hum of my refrigerator and the familiar scent of lemon dish soap. The bubbles clung to my weathered hands as I scrubbed Eleanor's favorite coffee mug for what felt like the 1,000th time since she'd been gone. It was a nightly ritual, washing the single plate, single fork, and single cup that marked another solitary dinner in my small brick house in South Philadelphia. The kitchen, once filled with her laughter and the aroma of her cooking, now felt cavernous. I dried the mug and placed it on the rack, a lonely monument to better times. My eyes drifted to the faded photos on the refrigerator door. There was Leo at his high school graduation, 17 and grinning, with Eleanor's arm wrapped proudly around his shoulders. That was before the arguments, before the money, before the silence that had stretched between us for a full year. The shrill ring of the telephone cut through my thoughts like a blade. My heart hammered as I squinted at the caller ID. Leo. For a moment I couldn't move. A year of silence was a deep chasm to cross with a simple hello. The last time we'd spoken, he'd stormed out of my restaurant, Vance's, after I'd refused to fund another of his vague investment opportunities. Eleanor would have known the right words to say. She always did. Hello? My voice came out rougher than I intended. Dad? Leo's voice was hesitant, the way it used to be when he was a boy and had broken something valuable. It's me. I sank into my worn leather armchair, the one Eleanor had insisted we buy. I know who it is, son. I wasn't expecting your call. I know. It's been too long. Way too long. He paused, and I could hear him take a breath. Emma and I, we've been talking. We miss you, Dad. We miss being a family. The word hung in the air. Family. Something we'd lost somewhere between pride and stubbornness. I miss it too, I admitted, the honesty surprising even myself. Dad, would you come for dinner tonight? Emma's making that pot roast you always loved. We could talk. Really talk. My gaze fell on our wedding photo on the side table. Eleanor always said families find their way back to each other. Maybe she was right. What time? 7:30. I'll text you the address. We moved to the main line last year. The main line. That was expensive territory. I'll be there. Thank you, Dad, he said, his voice softening with relief. Thank you for giving us another chance. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering dusk, clutching the wedding photo. A purpose I hadn't felt in months surged through me. I went upstairs and pulled out the navy suit Eleanor had bought for Leo's graduation, a fine suit for an important occasion. This was an important occasion. I chose my best bottle of aged whiskey from the cabinet, a peace offering. Tonight, I thought, tonight I would finally have my son back. The Uber arrived on time, a clean sedan with a driver who commented on the pleasant evening. As we pulled away from the curb, the familiar brownstones of South Philadelphia blurred into evening shadows. This was my world, a place of honest work and shared histories whispered over chain-link fences. But as we merged onto the highway, that world began to dissolve. The city gave way to manicured suburbs, and soon we were crossing into New Jersey. The houses grew larger, the lawns more pristine, the driveways wider and gracefully curved. The main line is a beautiful area, the driver remarked, noticing my wide-eyed silence. A lot of successful folks out here. I'm visiting my son, I replied, a swell of pride in my chest. He was one of those successful folks now. The car slowed to a stop before a house that didn't seem real. It looked like something torn from the pages of an architecture magazine, a modern stone fortress with grand columns and perfectly sculpted topiaries. A circular driveway wrapped around an ornate fountain, where water danced in the soft evening light. Parked like gleaming trophies were a Mercedes and a BMW. I sat frozen for a moment, staring at a level of wealth I couldn't comprehend. This is it, sir, the driver announced cheerfully. My hand trembled slightly as I paid him. Stepping onto the pristine pavement, my shoes, polished but undeniably old, felt clumsy and loud. Perfectly trimmed hedges lined the walkway, and as I approached the massive oak door, motion sensor lights illuminated my path with theatrical precision. Before my hand could even touch the brass doorbell, the door swung open. A middle-aged woman with kind, tired eyes stood in the doorway. She wore a crisp black dress that identified her as professional staff. "Mr. Vance," she said warmly, her accent hinting at Eastern Europe. "I am Elena. Mr. Leo and Miss Claire are so excited you are here." As she stepped aside to let me in, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a flicker of something I couldn't place concern, or maybe a warning. It vanished so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. The foyer was breathtaking. Marble floors gleamed, stretching towards a grand curved staircase. A crystal chandelier cast a warm glow on what looked like original oil paintings. "Dad!" Leo's voice boomed from deeper in the house. He appeared, looking like he'd stepped out of a fashion catalog in an expensive suit, his teeth impossibly white. He wrapped me in an embrace that felt almost desperate, holding on a beat too long. "You look great," he said, stepping back, his eyes both grateful and intensely anxious. Claire materialized at his side, a graceful vision in a silk dress. "Arthur," she swept forward and kissed my cheek, her expensive perfume enveloping me. "You look wonderful. We're so happy you're here." I managed a smile, completely overwhelmed. "This place is incredible. How did you—" "Real estate," Leo cut in, his laugh a little too loud. "Caught the market at just the right time. Lucky timing, mostly." Elena took my coat, my best one, which suddenly felt shabby. She gave me another one of those quick, troubled glances before disappearing down a hallway. I offered the bottle of whiskey. "I brought this. Dad, this is fantastic." Leo's face lit up as he examined the label. "You shouldn't have, but I'm glad you did." He led us towards the dining room. As we walked, I tried to reconcile this opulent reality with the son who'd begged me for money just 1 year ago. The dining room was like a scene from a historical film. A long mahogany table, polished to a mirror shine, was set for 3. Bone china plates with delicate gold rims gleamed under the chandelier, and an arsenal of silverware flanked each setting. "Only the best for a family reunion, right, Dad?" Leo said, beaming as he pulled out the chair at the head of the table for me. Claire settled gracefully to my left, Leo to my right. The seating felt deliberate, positioning me as the guest of honor, yet also placing me squarely between them. Leo opened the whiskey I'd brought and poured generous amounts into heavy crystal tumblers. He filled mine higher than I would have poured for myself. Claire raised her wineglass. "To family," she said, her smile radiant. "To forgiveness and fresh starts." "To Eleanor," Leo added, his voice catching just enough to seem sincere. "She would have wanted us together like this." The whiskey burned sweetly as we drank. As the meal began, their questions started, expertly woven into the conversation. "Tell us about the restaurant, Arthur." Claire leaned forward, her interest seeming genuine. "Leo says you built an empire from nothing." "Empire is a grand word," I chuckled, feeling the alcohol loosen the tension in my shoulders. "Just hard work. Eleanor always said, treat your employees like family, and your customers like friends." Don't be modest, Dad." Leo refilled my glass before I'd even noticed it was half empty. 7 locations now. That's impressive by any standard. He had been keeping track, even during our year of silence. A warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the whiskey. As Elena served a rich lobster bisque, the questions became more specific. "Do you ever think about retirement?" Claire asked casually. "Slowing down a bit?" "The restaurants keep me busy. They're what Eleanor and I built together." "But you can't work forever," Leo pressed gently. "Have you thought about succession planning? Legal arrangements for the future?" The question felt oddly professional, but the whiskey was making everything feel warm and hazy. The room seemed to hum with a pleasant energy. I found myself drinking more freely than I normally would, the relief of this reunion washing over me. As we ate the main course, a pot roast that tasted uncannily, like Eleanor's, their curiosity intensified. They asked about profit margins, property values, and the operational details of each location. Their interest felt less like catching up and more like an audit. My head grew lighter. The room felt warmer than before, and I had to fight to keep my focus. It must be the rich food, I told myself, the fine alcohol, the sheer emotional weight of the evening. Rick and Claire exchanged a look across the table, a silent communication I was too slow to interpret. I was just looking at a photo of the new Queen's opening, I said, reaching into my jacket for my phone. Eleanor would have been so proud. My phone vibrated in my hand just as I was about to pull it out. The buzz was sharp, insistent, startling me mid-sentence. Sorry, I mumbled, glancing apologetically at them. Probably just the night manager, but the number on the screen was local, yet completely unknown. I frowned, my thumb hovering over the notification as it buzzed again. Everything all right, Dad? Leo asked, leaning forward with an unnerving focus. Just an unfamiliar number. I shielded the screen with my napkin, a sudden, inexplicable instinct for privacy taking over. A text message appeared in stark, urgent, capital letters. Get up and leave. Now. Say nothing to your son. My blood ran cold. The warmth from the whiskey evaporated, replaced by a chilling dread that sobered me in an instant. The elegant dining room, with its soft light and rich aromas, suddenly felt like a cage. I read the message again, the capital letters screaming from the screen. Get up and leave. Now, say nothing to your son. Dad? Claire's voice seemed to come from a great distance. You look pale. Are you feeling all right? I forced my lips into a smile, a trembling imitation of normalcy. My heart was a trapped bird beating against my ribs. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, my hand shaking more than it should. Fine, just that rich food is hitting me harder than I expected. You sure you're okay? Leo studied my face, his attention sharp and analytical. You went completely white there for a second. I'm sure. The lie came easier than it should have. I had to get out. I had to follow the warning. I just need to... Excuse me for a moment. I pushed my chair back from the table. The bathroom, Leo asked, pointing toward the hallway. Second door on the left. We'll wait for you. Elena's bringing dessert. I stood carefully, testing my balance. The room still swayed, but now it was from adrenaline, not alcohol. My legs felt both heavy and disconnected from my body as I walked toward the hallway. I could feel their eyes on my back, watching, waiting. The hallway stretched before me, lined with expensive art that now seemed menacing in the dim light. Second door on the left. That was the path to normalcy, to pretending this was all a terrible misunderstanding. But the message had been clear. Leave. Now. Some instinct I thought I'd lost, made me continue walking straight, past the powder room, toward a swinging door at the end of the hall that I assumed led to the kitchen. The anonymous warning burned in my mind. Whoever sent it believed I was in immediate danger. I pushed the door open. Elena stood at an enormous sink, her back to me, washing crystal glasses with methodical precision. The room was silent, except for the soft clink of glass and the rush of water. She must have heard me enter, but she didn't turn or acknowledge my presence. She just kept washing, her shoulders tense. It was a deliberate act, a silent form of permission. She was letting me pass. The kitchen's back door was just beyond her, a dark rectangle promising fresh air and escape. Freedom. I moved quietly across the marble floor, my dress shoes making no sound. As I passed behind her, she still did not look up, but I saw her hand pause for a fraction of a second over the running water. The door opened silently onto a manicured lawn that could have belonged to a golf course. The cool night air hit my face, a welcome shock that cleared the last of the whiskey's fog. Motion sensor lights flared to life, illuminating a stone path that led across the perfect grass toward a gate in the back fence. I walked quickly, my steps urgent, not caring if my shoes left imprints in the dewy lawn. This wasn't a home, it was a stage, and I was getting off before the final, terrible act. The gate opened onto a quiet, tree-lined street, another world away from the drama unfolding in the house behind me. My phone felt like a block of ice in my hand. I pulled up my ride-sharing app, my fingers fumbling as I requested a pickup 1 block away from Leo's address, a small precaution born of pure instinct. The app promised a car in 5 minutes. 5 minutes to decide if I was a paranoid old man or a survivor. The headlights of the Uber cut through the suburban darkness like a lifeline. I climbed into the back seat, gave the driver my Brooklyn address, and with a trembling finger, dialed the number that had shattered my evening. It rang twice before a voice answered, no longer disguised, but quiet and laced with that same Eastern European accent. It was Elena. "I hoped you would call," she said. "Who is this? Why did you warn me?" My voice was a rough whisper. "You were in danger, Mr. Vance." "Impossible. I was having dinner with my son." There was a pause, heavy with the truth I didn't want to hear. "Your son owes $2.3 million to people who do not accept late payments." The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. The world outside the car window, with its perfect lawns and happy homes, seemed to mock the ugliness of her words. "That can't be," I repeated, my voice lacking all conviction. "Leo lived in a mansion. He drove a Mercedes. He borrowed against everything to cover gambling debts," she continued, her voice calm and methodical. "Underground casinos, high-stakes poker. The men he owes money to gave him 2 weeks to pay. That was 3 days ago." My hand gripped the door handle, a useless, reflexive urge to flee the information. "But the dinner? The warning? The whiskey you brought contained a drug, zetrulum. It makes alcohol 5 times stronger, makes you agreeable to suggestion." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The dizziness, the way 2 glasses had felt like a whole bottle. Leo's eagerness to pour my drinks. Claire's constant, watchful eyes. They hadn't just invited me to dinner. They had set a trap. They had legal documents prepared. Elena's relentless voice continued. "A complete transfer of your restaurant properties. Power of attorney giving your son full control. All they needed was your signature." I stared out at the passing streetlights, each one a flash of sickening revelation. The boy I had taught to ride a bike had grown into a man who would drug his own father for money. The son who had cried in my arms after Eleanor's funeral now saw me as nothing more than a solution to his problems. "How do you know all of this?" I finally asked, my throat tight. "They are not careful. They spoke of the plan in the kitchen, as if I was just part of the furniture." "Why help me?" Her answer was simple. "Because it was wrong, and because you treated me with kindness. You looked at me when you spoke. You said thank you." "Oh." The Uber continued its steady path toward Brooklyn, each mile carrying me further from the son I thought I knew. My phone buzzed with missed calls from Leo. 3 of them. Panic was setting in at the mansion. "Be careful," Elena warned before we hung up. "Desperate people do desperate things. He has 11 days to find that money." The call ended, leaving me in the sterile quiet of the car. I pulled Eleanor's photo from my wallet, its edges worn soft from years of touch. Her smile was a beacon from a better, more honest world. She had been strong. She had never backed down from a fight when our family was on the line. I thought of what Leo had become, and what he might do to someone else in his desperation. My safety was in Brooklyn, but justice was back in that mansion on the main line. Eleanor's smile in the photograph seemed to steady me. She would never run from this. She would face it, for our family, for what was right. Safety felt like cowardice. "Driver," I leaned forward, my voice firm. "Change of plans. We're going back." He met my eyes in the rearview mirror, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Sir, you seem really upset. Maybe you should think about this." "I have," I said. "Take me back to that address." Then my fingers, no longer shaking, dialed 911. "Emergency services." "What is your emergency?" The voice was professional, calm. "My son is attempting to poison me to steal my business assets." The words sounded insane, even to my own ears, like a line from a bad movie. But they were true. The dispatcher's questions came in a rapid, efficient stream. I answered them all methodically, the years of running a business taking over. I gave them the address, the nature of the drug, the details of the fraud, and the fact that I was on my way back to confront them. "Sir, I strongly advise you not to return to that location until officers have secured the scene. If I don't go back, they'll destroy the evidence," I said, my resolve hardening with every word. "Officers are en route. Estimated arrival in 15 minutes. The ride back to the main line was a blur. The magnificent houses no longer looked beautiful. They looked like vaults, designed to hide secrets. As we neared Leo's street, I saw two police cruisers parked discreetly in the shadows, lights off. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was real. I was about to destroy my son to save myself. I had the Uber drop me at the corner and walked up the long, curved driveway. Each step on the cold stone felt heavy, final. The perfect facade of the mansion seemed to mock me. I reached the massive oak door and pressed the bell. The chimes echoed through the house. Seconds later, the door was yanked open. Leo stood there, his face a mask of relief, suspicion, and barely concealed panic. "Dad, where in God's name have you been?" His smile was painted on, his eyes darting past me into the darkness. "We were worried sick." "Sorry, son," I said, forcing an apologetic tone. "I just needed some fresh air. Felt a little dizzy after all that rich food." Claire appeared behind him, her designer dress wrinkled from what must have been frantic pacing. Her perfect hostess mask had slipped, revealing raw fear. "Arthur, you gave us such a scare," she said, her voice a little too high. She rushed forward and grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my coat. "Are you feeling better now?" "Much better, thank you," I said, allowing her to guide me back into the pristine foyer. I could feel the tremor in her hand. I just needed to clear my head. Walked farther than I intended. It's a beautiful neighborhood. "Of course, Dad. Whatever you need," Leo said, closing the door behind us. The sound echoed with a dreadful finality. They exchanged a look over my head, a flash of silent, desperate communication. The trap was set once more, but this time, I wasn't the one walking into it. They were. Task 7. The trap is sprung. I settled back into my chair at the head of the table. The room was thick with unspoken questions. Leo and Claire took their seats, their bodies rigid with a tension that betrayed their calm expressions. Elena had cleared the table with nervous efficiency, but the ghost of their plan remained. "Well," Leo said, forcing a bright tone, "since you're feeling better, maybe we could finally have that last toast." He stood and walked to the liquor cabinet, his movements a little too quick, a little too eager. I watched in the reflection of a framed painting as he poured fresh glasses of whiskey. I saw him linger over my glass, his back to me, and add a few drops of liquid from a small, clear vial he palmed from his pocket. "You know," I began, my voice calm and conversational, "this evening reminds me of the day you were born, Leo." He tensed. "Dad, that's sweet, but maybe we should toast first. This whiskey is too good to let it get warm." "This is important, son." I leaned back, folding my hands peacefully over my stomach. "Your mother was in labor for 14 hours. Longest day of my life." Claire's smile was strained. "Arthur, the whiskey will lose its flavor if we wait. Can't we drink and listen at the same time?" "Patience, my dear. Some stories can't be rushed." Leo carried the glasses to the table. I noted the slight milky sediment swirling in mine as it caught the chandelier's light. His own glass was perfectly clear. He set my drink down with a hand that was not quite steady. "The doctor kept assuring us everything was fine," I continued, lifting my glass as if to admire its color. "But your mother—" Eleanor had instincts about these things. She always knew when something wasn't quite right. My eyes met Leo's over the rim of the glass. I saw a flicker of panic in their depths. "Fascinating," Claire interrupted, her voice tight. "But surely, the toast—" I swirled the poison liquid, watching the particles dance. "You're absolutely right about savoring good whiskey," I agreed, bringing the glass near my lips, but not drinking. Eleanor always said patience makes everything taste better. Leo's eye twitched. "Dad, please, just one sip." "The thing about your mother," I mused, setting the untouched glass back down, "is that she worried you'd inherit my stubbornness. She was right, wasn't she? Once you set your mind on something, nothing can stop you." Claire stood abruptly and moved behind my chair, her hands settling on my shoulders with a grip that was meant to feel intimate but was painfully tense. "Arthur, you're such a wonderful storyteller. Why don't we toast to Leo's birth? To new beginnings?" Her fingers pressed into my shoulders, urging me to pick up the glass. The plan was falling apart, and they knew it. "I think," I said slowly, my voice dropping, "Eleanor would be heartbroken to see the choices you've made." Leo's face went white. "What do you mean by that?" Before he could say more, 3 sharp, authoritative knocks echoed from the front door. The sound was like a gunshot, in the silent, tension-filled room. Leo's glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor. Claire's hands flew from my shoulders as if they'd been burned. They both froze, staring at the hallway, their faces masks of pure terror. A deep voice boomed from the foyer, clear and undeniable. "Police! Open the door!" The metallic click of handcuffs echoed in the stunned silence of the dining room. It was a sound of absolute finality, a sound that shattered the illusion of wealth and family forever. Leo stood frozen, his face the color of old parchment, as a senior officer stepped forward. "Leo Vance, you are under arrest for attempted poisoning and conspiracy to commit fraud," the officer stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "You have the right to remain silent." "This is insane!" Leo's voice finally returned, cracking like a teenager's. "It's a misunderstanding. Dad, please tell them." Claire began to sob, a theatrical, high-pitched wail. "He's confused. He hasn't been well." I stood slowly and picked up the untouched glass of whiskey from the table. "There is no mistake," I said, my voice steady. I held the glass up to the chandelier's light, the milky sediment swirling within. "This glass contains a drug called zetrulum. My son intended for me to drink it, so he could have me sign away my entire business." A junior officer carefully took the glass from my hand, placing it in an evidence bag. The senior officer's gaze was hard as he looked at Leo. "Attempted poisoning carries a minimum sentence of 8 to 12 years, Mr. Vance." The reality of the words seemed to hit Leo like a physical blow. His knees buckled, and all pretense of innocence vanished, replaced by raw, primal fear. "No, you don't understand," he blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. "The loan sharks. They'll kill me if I don't pay them in 11 days. They threatened to break my legs. I had no choice." Claire's face drained of all color. "Leo, shut up. Don't say anything else." But it was too late, he had confessed. Not out of remorse, but out of a desperate, selfish attempt to save himself. The officers exchanged a look. They had heard desperate stories before. "Claire Vance," the junior officer said, turning to her with a fresh pair of handcuffs. "You are also under arrest as a co-conspirator." "No!" Her perfect facade crumbled into ugly hysterics. "It was him. He forced me. I was scared of him, of what he would do. I'm a victim too." As they were led away, their designer clothes looking absurd against the cold steel of the handcuffs, Leo turned back to me, his eyes wild with one last desperate attempt at manipulation. "Dad, how could you do this to your own family? Eleanor would be heartbroken." "Your mother valued honesty above all else," I answered, my voice as cold as the marble floor. "She would never forgive what you tried to do tonight." The Montclair police station was a world away from the mansion. The fluorescent lights were harsh, the walls were institutional gray, and the air smelled of stale coffee and antiseptic. I sat with a detective named Harrison, calmly recounting the evening's events while Leo and Claire were processed in separate rooms. Through a reinforced glass window, I could see my son pacing his cell like a caged, terrified animal. "The prepared legal documents were exactly where your source said they'd be," Detective Harrison confirmed, setting down his coffee. "Power of attorney, business transfers, the whole package. With his confession and the evidence from the glass, the case is airtight." "How long will they serve?" I asked. "With everything combined, Leo's looking at 15, maybe 20 years. His wife might get less if she cooperates, but she's facing serious time." The numbers felt unreal. A third of my son's life, gone. From a holding cell down the hall, I could hear Claire's voice rising, hysterically blaming Leo for everything. The perfect couple had turned on each other the moment the pressure was applied. They were not a family, they were just co-conspirators. It was nearly midnight when I finished my formal statement. The station buzzed with a grim, late-night energy. As I stood in the lobby, waiting for the officer who would drive me home, I could see Leo slumped on the bench in his holding cell, his head in his hands. He wasn't a monster. He was just a weak man who had made a monstrous choice. I felt a pang of sorrow, not for the man he had become, but for the little boy I had lost. Down the hall, Claire's accusations continued to echo, a bitter soundtrack to our family's implosion. Before leaving, there was one last thing I had to do. I found a quiet corner in the lobby and dialed the number that had saved my life. She answered on the second ring, her voice no longer disguised, but warm with genuine concern. "This is Elena." Relief washed over me. "Elena, it's Arthur Vance. I... I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life tonight." "I only did what was right, Mr. Vance," she said quietly. "I could not stand by and watch them hurt you. You treated me with kindness, like a person, not a piece of furniture." Her simple decency was a stark contrast to my own son's calculated cruelty. In a world of lies, this near stranger had been my only source of truth. "They spoke of their plan as if you weren't even there," I recalled. "They assumed I would not understand, or would be too afraid to speak. They were wrong. You risked everything, Elena. Your job, your safety." "Some things are more important than a job," she replied, her voice steady with conviction. I knew she was right. She had lost her position because of her courage, and I couldn't let that stand. "Elena, I need to ask you something. What will you do now?" There was a brief silence on the line. "I will find another job. I always do." I own 7 restaurants," I said, the plan forming in my mind, clear and right. "My newest location in Crown Heights needs a general manager, someone I can trust completely, someone with your moral character and judgment." The silence stretched longer this time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "Mr. Vance, you do not have to do that. This isn't charity, Elena. This is a job offer. Integrity like yours is the most valuable asset in any business. You've proven you have it in abundance. The salary is $60,000 to start, with full health benefits and profit sharing after a year. I will train you myself." I heard a soft sob through the phone. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Just say you'll start on Monday," I said, a smile touching my lips for the first time all night. 10 o'clock. I'll be there to welcome you." After we hung up, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. The ride back to Brooklyn was quiet. I was leaving one family behind in the wreckage of their own greed, but I had just laid the foundation for a new one, built not on blood but on loyalty and respect. The familiar front door of my South Philly home welcomed me like an old friend. Inside, the quiet no longer felt like loneliness. It felt like peace. It was a sanctuary, a place where honesty lived in the worn leather of my armchair, and loyalty was etched into the faded photographs on the wall. My first act was to walk to the refrigerator. I gently took down the photos of Leo and Claire at their wedding, at his graduation. I didn't tear them or throw them away. I simply slid them into a kitchen drawer and closed it, shutting the door on a chapter of my life that was now over. Eleanor's smiling face remained, a silent guardian of the home we had built. The next morning, I walked to Vance's, my flagship restaurant, the heart of everything I'd built. The aroma of garlic and fresh-baked bread wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. Sal, my manager for over 20 years, greeted me at the door with a firm handshake. His weathered face broke into a warm smile. "Arthur, good to see you. You look different, lighter." He didn't need to know the details. He just needed to be who he'd always been. Loyal, dependable, family. "I feel lighter, Sal," I said, and for the first time it was the absolute truth. "We've got a new manager starting at the Crown Heights location. I want you to help me show her the ropes." A few weeks later, I stood inside the bustling new restaurant. Elena, dressed in a sharp manager's uniform, moved through the dining room with a quiet confidence that seemed to come naturally to her. She was a fast learner, her attention to detail, and her genuine kindness toward the staff and customers proving my instincts right. I was showing her how Eleanor used to arrange the fresh flowers for the front tables when she paused and looked at me, her eyes filled with a gratitude that words couldn't capture. "Thank you, Arthur," she said softly. "Thank you, Elena," I replied. "You reminded me what real strength looks like." In that moment, surrounded by the happy chatter of diners and the clinking of glasses, I understood. I had lost a son, but I had not lost my family. It's a strange thing, learning late in life where true value lies. It isn't in the grand mansions or the illusion of success. It is found in the quiet courage of doing what is right, even when you are afraid. Betrayal can come from those who share your blood, but loyalty can be found in the most unexpected of places, offered by a near stranger who sees your humanity. A real family is not something you are born into. It is something you build, one act of trust, and one gesture of kindness at a time. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope this story resonated with you. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one.